All right, everybody, welcome back to Marked by Wrestling. It's time for another episode of Mount Rushmore Matches. I'm here with my tag team partner, my shoot older brother, David, who's here with me. And if you join us for the first episode, thank you. Talking about the Steiner brothers, and hope you guys enjoyed that episode and maybe expanded your tastes a little bit. Just as we're still kind of in the early episodes of doing this series, Mount Rushmore Matches. The idea of Mount Rushmore is kind of like, oh, give me the best things, and that's a very subjective term, especially in professional wrestling. So my goal with this particular series with Marked by Wrestling is to introduce you to older wrestling content, if maybe it was before your time, or reintroduce you if it's been a long time since you've engaged with it, and give you sort of a sampler of that particular talent, team, whatever it may be. And we're going to go today with a foreign heel. Listen, geopolitically speaking, we can never predict what's going to be going on in the world when we make the decisions of what we're going over. But as it stands, after we talked after the Steiners episode yesterday, me and my brother, David brought up this particular performer, which if you're seeing over on the banner, I'm going to go ahead and put the full banner up on the screen. Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare. So some of you old heads will remember Nikita. He had a pretty reasonably lengthy wrestling career in the NWA and WCW from the mid 80s to close to the mid 90s. And then that was about it. So about a decade in the spotlight with a little bit of time off. And if you're unfamiliar with Nikita at all, first of all, just think of this sort of, and David, you can correct me if I'm off base here, but this sort of hybrid of modern tropes. Think of a Rusev, like a ruthless foreign heel. Think of a Goldberg, a kind of unstoppable musclehead, maybe a little inexperienced in the ring, and maybe a little too bought into his gimmick at the same time. Character. And I was trying to think of who else. Maybe a Ryback to an extent, just booked really strong, and if put with the right partner in the ring, could create some really, really big reactions from the crowd. So I came in a little late on Nikita, just by virtue of my age at the time. But you were, you've always got a few year stretch on me and our fandom. So share with the audience, David, your memories of Nikita, or anything that's like your introduction to him, or what your opening thoughts were for him.
Yeah, well, we're going to revisit some of the matches that are representative of the feuds that really stand out to me. But um, back when back when I wasn't really sure where the line of reality started, he scared me a little bit
Yeah.
as a kid. And so there were things that we'll talk about that uh, the, them putting a rocket on his back with his injury of certain promoters' brothers, and
Yeah.
you know those kind of things really made me as a kid especially believe that this guy would eat me. And so um, I just really, and back then too, um, in the you know mid 80s, 85, maybe even slightly before, but the height of the us versus them mentality. Um, he was a political heel, even though our dad actually said that he heard him speaking Russian on TV one time, and our dad could have sworn that he was from Oklahoma or something because he said y'all in this thick Russian. But I come to find out years later that he was actually a contemporary of, of Hawk and Animal, and was kind of there from from the Midwest, so to speak, or
Yeah, he was a
Minnesota.
Minnesotan, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And then, and shoe interviews I've heard lately, you can definitely hear that Midwestern. So I don't think it was a Southern thing, even
Yeah.
if it was a Southern colloquialism. Um, but yeah, going so far as to legally changing his name, and the performer bought into it as much as I did. So, yeah, he was at the height of the Cold War, us versus them mentality. He was the ideologically speaking, perfect heel, um, and really could have made any other heel, as we'll see. And looking over the history of his matches, could have made any other heel into a face
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't Nikita Koloff. And so I just really, in retrospect, appreciate the lengths he went to protect the business. Sorry to use that terminology, but that's what he did.
Yeah. I yeah, I mean to be referential, I never had a problem with performers protecting the business. But that honestly, I think about Nikita, because at the same time over in the WWF you would have had the Iron Sheik, right? And Nikolai Volkov, if you're going to be country specific. But in terms of the most hated foreign heel, Iron Sheik was definitely there, I think, for WWF. And I think looking at how both of those guys are perceived in storytelling, not in real life, because Khosrow, I mean,
Yeah.
he was definitely one of those. You want him,
Certainly make you humble.
yeah. You want him with you, him and Haku and Brody or whoever in a fight. They'll have your back. But is a great mirror and a great representation to the presentation of the WWF and the NWA's products at that time. Because Iron Sheik was one of the biggest heels WWF had for a stint in those early Hulkamania days. I mean, Piper came screaming in once Hogan, rose to his ascendancy there. But I still, even back here behind me, I should have prepared for this, but on the shelf, I've got a VHS tape of the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoon, which you would never, if you were an NWA fan. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, listen, you love both. We were watching both at those times, but something about the NWA and later WCW to a certain point. Maybe until Hogan got there, I guess. I don't know. Really did the job that, and I don't mean any shade here, but did the job that AEW thought it was going to try to do when it started, of presenting itself as a legitimate sport. Like I still remember at a very young age, Ric Flair's countless TBS, commentary table interviews with Tony Schiavone on Saturday nights, talking about our sport. And like, I just remember him always calling it a sport. And even back then, just knowing that Hogan, Savage, none of them really ever used that word, right? And they tried really hard, the NWA did, to give an air of legitimacy to what they were doing. And the motto, the mantra we have here at Marked by Wrestling is believing makes wrestling better. And so like for Nikita to buy into that, I bring that up about the cartoon thing is this: you would never have thought of Nikita Koloff as a cartoon character. No. And so for him to be so bought in to who he was portraying at a time where, he really was hated, and you're right, and we'll get to that in some of the matches here, that he was so hated that the other most hated heels could be perceived as baby faces, is a really telling thing. And talking about believing making wrestling better, I think this is another thing where the NWA excelled, and WCW in some of their years excelled over the WWF in crowd response, because so much of the crowd was bought in, to the work. I mean, and they would, and this is something, this is an old thing I cry about from time to time. I miss crowd crowds popping for every single punch that happens. And that didn't happen a whole lot in the WWF. It had in their really, really big moments. But if you got, the Horsemen jumping on somebody, and then Dusty or the Road Warriors or Sting or whoever came in, and this was even still happening in the NWO days when Sting would drop from the ceiling. The moment he made contact, it sounded like Obafemi was walking down the aisle. It was just woo, woo for every shot. And that's how bought in the crowd was to the action, not just the general story that was being told. What you find more, I think, in WWE these days is that the crowd kind of responds to the big moments or to the story arcs rather than each little individual moment that's happening. So Nikita has an interesting career. Coming through here, he's a part of the Russians, as they're called. Speaking of which, I'm just going to throw them up on the screen here. So that's Nikita in the bottom right-hand corner. For those of you who are unaware, this is an iteration of the Russians. He came in with Uncle Ivan Koloff, the one standing in the back. And I'm not sure if you can see this or not, David, but Ivan, by the way, I don't know if we'll ever do an episode on Ivan, but Ivan, a legend in his own right, literally in the Hall of Fame, but also the man who took the WWF title off of Bruno Sammartino, which is major. I cannot emphasize enough to you, if for the uninitiated, how big of a deal that was at that time as well. That was before my time, but I know how deified Bruno was to WWF fans at that time. And for him, for a Russian gimmick to take that title away, I can remember Iraqi sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter beating the Ultimate Warrior, which I don't even think comes close, and how riotous almost that crowd was at the Rumble in '91 for that. So just in comparison. Speaking of sympathizers, the third one, fun piece of trivia, given news that broke today as we're recording this, Crusher Khrushchev, that was his name, right? In this picture anyways, Barry Darsow, a man of a million gimmicks, but probably most well known as Demolition Smash.
I thought you were going to say the Repo Man.
Well, he also well known for that as well. But side note, Axe and Smash, congratulations, Axe and Smash. Demolition have been announced into the WWE Hall of Fame. That news broke today through The Undertaker, who is slowly becoming the Silver Surfer of the Hall of Fame, just riding in on his Harley surfboard and heralding the news of Hall of Fames to come for people, which honestly, as a gimmick change, I actually really like that for him. If a year from now, when we hear the gong, we know somebody's about to be inducted to the Hall of Fame, that would be pretty cool.
You just look to see who the veteran is around.
It's like, what we got over? Who's on the podcast next week?
Hey, since you mentioned Ivan and Crusher, there was a Russian assassin who was masked, but there was a guy, and I want to say, and hopefully I'm not getting the name wrong, but the biggest one I'd ever seen was a guy named Vladimir Volkov. And so maybe, if you're watching at home, throw that into your Google machine and look up Vladimir I believe it's Volkov. But he was one of the replacements after our subject was no longer aligned with Uncle Ivan, but he came in as a heater, but he was huge. Anyway,
okay. Yeah, we'll have to maybe do a little after show homework on that. So the rules here are simple for Mount Rushmore matches. We're going to give you 4 matches to sample, to choose from, that we'll talk about, to give you an idea about the subject in question. Depending on who nominated it, we'll kind of walk us through it, and we go in chronological order. So for starters, our stretch of matches goes from 1986 to 1991. So it's only a 5-year stretch of matches we're going through here, which is I didn't actually do the math on the Steiner math, if you will, on the Steiner's episode for how far we went, but it was like 90 to 98, I guess. So it was about 8 years there. And of course, they had a much wider career than Nikita did. And for those of you who might be anticipating which matches we're going to bring up, I left out pretty much everything after his return in the 90s, other than one match. And it's not the War Games match. I'll just go ahead and spoil that now, that we're saving War Games for maybe a special occasion, because there's plenty to dig into with that particular match type. But the first,
go ahead.
This
is just my opinion, but there's also no flat top Nikita, because that's not real Nikita.
Oh, absolutely not.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, Nikita oscillates between give me just a second, sorry. All right, sneeze for the working man. So we had he oscillates between face and heel because of some real life developments and all this stuff, and he grew his hair out after, was it after the fall of the Soviet Union at that point?
Yeah, it was the first time I saw him with hair, or with the flat top, was when he was in an interview segment at one of the Clash of the Champions.
It was the first Clash.
Yeah, it was the one that also had Al Perez on it, and that kind of thing too. So
yeah, and Dr. Death.
Yeah, he was as clean as he looked. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So anyway, all right. So opening match here is actually a little bit of a cheat. We want to recommend a landmark thing in pro wrestling history. And if you're in the comments and you have a deeper encyclopedia than we do, first of all, welcome. We're glad you're here for that. We want to build appreciation for past wrestling. If you can recall a more official starting point than this to our collective knowledge, this is the first time pro wrestling at a high level had a best of 7 series in matches. And it's between Nikita Koloff and, I was thinking here. Oh, here we go. Oh, I got it just like this for you.
Oh, nice.
Nikita Koloff and Magnum TA. And before I turn it over to you, so this was David's recommendation. Before I turn it over to you, I just want to talk to some of my subscribers here. If the name Magnum TA doesn't mean anything to you, and there's really no other, I always like to try to make modern comparisons, right? So, what if Hangman Adam Page was as badass as he thought he was? Is what I would say with Magnum TA. Hangman, and I really don't mean anything profoundly negative about Hangman, but he's like probably the only mainstream cowboy gimmick I can think of right now, and there were many back in these days. But and we'll talk about why Magnum, didn't have a super long career in this as well, for those of you who aren't aware. And I'll let you handle that, David. But one thing I'd say about Magnum is huge, like body type wise. I mean, like the size of a JBL, like a Barry Windham, big guy, could move in the ring. And I didn't really realize this, but in the lead up, Magnum had a little bit of a Steve Austin streak in him. I never knew him to be sort of an anti-hero. And so that I found that pretty fascinating, not really being a contemporary viewer of Magnum and coming in maybe right on the tail end of this. So there was a best of 7 series. It was for the U.S. title, by the way. So this is actually the first of 3 times we have high profile U.S. title best of 7s in wrestling history. WWE has done it twice since then, once with Chris Benoit and Booker T, who themselves had done it over the TV title in WCW in the Monday Night Wars. And then Carmelo Hayes and Andrade had done it, in the past couple of years as well. By the way, before, I know, David, I'm just hogging all the time, but I had to make an excuse to show the U.S. title they were fighting for. It's one of my top 3 favorite belt designs of all time. I mean, the one that they replaced it with is not bad at all, but this is just one of my favorites, just a sentimental favorite, so I wanted to share it. But best of 7 series, take us away. Tell us your thoughts and your memories about this match and why it needs to be appointment viewing.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of belts, my favorite belt was the gold belt that Ric Flair won for Awful Harley Race.
The old NWA title.
Yeah, that predates the big gold.
Okay.
And so my second favorite belt was the U.S. Championship that Magnum won and feuded uh, with Nikita, with Tully Blanchard, which was a silver version of the original NWA World Championship. We don't get to see that a whole lot, but I like that a lot. And just from since it's okay to mark out in this platform, um, before I appreciated who or what made a good heel and work rate and all these kind of things that some people think kills the love of the business. I don't, because I think it just lets you peek behind the curtain and see really how hard these people work on their crafts and hurt their bodies and anyway.
Still real to me.
Yeah, we got to revisit that. I was just thinking about that the other day. But anyway, um, I my during that time frame, what made me love wrestling, um, before I would allow myself to ideologically cheer for a heel, Magnum TA was the top for me, for lots of reasons. We were programmed by the promoters to pull for him in that way, but the Standards as a whole, if I can let you peek behind the curtain, we're from
Unreal.
yeah, we're from Virginia, and at the time where he was being billed from, Chesapeake, Virginia, was about an hour down the road. And so my other favorite, wrestlers that I saw on TV and other promotions were from, LA or New York or Chicago. I mean, that's great and everything. Um, Another one of my favorite top five is from Chicago, and it's synonymous with the um, but to me, like Magnum TA was mine and like belonged to me. The fandom, no matter if he won, if he beat Tully Blanchard, or if he beat Wahoo, or if he beat any of these other people, it didn't matter because we knew that he was either he was going to get his comeuppance, whether it showed in the record books or not. And so uh, Magnum TA, when it was believable and very real before we're smartened up in any kind of way, was it, for me. And so to say that uh, we took it personally when he had to go into a best of 7 series with the most believable and scariest heel I had ever seen in wrestling uh, was just unacceptable. And so to watch things on local television, as we did back in the day, there was no network. We didn't have satellite. Um, you know, uh, I shoot, I probably didn't see. Uh, I saw Nikita with the U.S. Championship before I saw um, 4 of those matches. So it was much of it was after the fact, but yeah, him being about as local as it can be, him fighting the scariest heel we'd ever seen, um, and him just being um, just his move set, being an exciting worker, just it really increased and stepped up my love for professional wrestling. And so, um, then years later, I haven't really understood um, his name, uh, other than it being TA, being Terry Allen. The Magnum, I now understand he had a Tom Selleck mustache, but I don't get the Magnum TA other than being a play on Magnum PI. But
Yeah,
whatever. Once you use something, enough, it doesn't have to make sense anymore, I guess. And so, um, but I probably would have had a problem with that 10 to 15 years later. But as a kid, didn't matter.
yeah.
So yeah,
I'm trying to imagine some sort of modern, NXT debut that is like a clear ripoff of some
yeah,
popular TV character. And, you know, TV streaming is all over the place these days. So I don't think you have some universally surrounded television program like back when the 3 channel days,
right.
that everyone was watching. But trying to think about that, like if like I don't know, thinking about basketball, if somebody came in named LeBron Jordan or something like that
Yeah,
is just, yeah, I mean, that's is kind of the idea there. But that's the funny thing about wrestling is eventually it just wears on your psyche to a degree. You're like, oh yeah, it's Magnum TA, and you're not even thinking about that reference anymore.
right.
If their personality is big enough, I should say,
Mhm.
you just embrace it and accept it to them. Um, yeah, so there were 7 matches there. There are match 6 and 7. So are the ones that I'm gonna attempt to have listed in the episode description, even though this is one entry for us, where they split victories there. Magnum, and it's not a dusty finish, but Nikita always had Ivan in his corner, and Magnum was usually on his own in those situations, I believe. And so, he was. I think they did a great. This is one time where kind of pulling the rug out from under you worked really well with Nikita because he was so terrifying and so brutal. His finish was a clothesline, by the way, called the Russian sickle. Um, and if you're even enough of a fan to remember JBL's clothesline from hell, if delivered correctly, a clothesline can work perfectly fine as a finish.
Yeah, and
If
we covered the Steiner line last week. So
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, Rick said, "I'm going to make sure this is a finish whether you like it or not."
right.
Um and Nikita delivered it that way for sure. And in the lead up, I think, to one of these matches is this when just talking about how out of control this match, like again, and in years to come we'll be dating ourselves by making modern references, but like one of many feuds going on in modern WWE right now is Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu, and I think they're doing a good job of 2026 chaos with the two of them. But if you want to talk about chaos, the way Magnum and Nikita's feud like just spilled over into authority figures getting attacked and things like that. It was so, again, taking it back 30, 40 years to people really believing what they're seeing. And then David Crockett, announcer, gets attacked by Nikita. And this is actually, now that I'm saying it, it's not actually in this feud. It's in the other one. It's in our third match. So I spoke too soon, but nevertheless, like that still added to the mystique and danger of Nikita, right?
Yeah.
And so you have those things happening, and it put me on the level of thinking like in maybe '09 when Randy Orton punted Vince in the head. Like
Yeah.
there's just certain thresholds you didn't think would see crossed from a heel, and then it happens, and it looks really vicious when it does. And so him doing that, getting over like that, having a baby face like Magnum, having enough sort of fire in him as a sort of rebel anti-hero, knowing, hey, this is a guy that can actually beat Nikita, forcing, and I kind of see a little bit of this in Gunther nowadays too, like this unbeatable force all of a sudden has to cheat a little bit.
Yeah.
And that really send the crowd over the top because you see like, oh, he's beatable. And if life was fair, the good guy would have won. And it just sends the crowd into hysterics.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that particular best of 7, well worth checking out for sure. And matches 6 and 7 are both really good. And there's a little, shenanigans going on at the end of both matches to get where we're going. But sadly, after that, some amount of time after that, Magnum TA ends up in a really horrific car accident. How old were you when that happened?
I want to say I was 11 or 12 when that happened. And so, I made mention of where we lived. That was on the local news.
Oh,
Like, yeah. And
I
so,
remember Connie Chung was our local news anchor
yeah, she was.
back in the day.
Yeah. And so, Wavy TV10
Yeah.
out of Virginia Beach, I think it was. So, uh, it's one of those things. It's very vivid.
Oh
But
yeah.
well, anyway, we'll probably cover that in another episode. um, yeah, I remember what were you talking about? So,
Just a Magnum's car wreck.
yeah. And so, um, his there was a story about it. So it was on the local news for maybe 2 days, and then after that, he was still in the hospital, still in traction. But and a story popped up in PWI, and if you've seen, you don't have that picture, do you?
No,
And
but if you talk about it for a while, maybe I can get it
yeah,
in time.
well,
We'll see.
there was a picture of Magnum while he was still in the hospital, wearing a Celtics jersey, which was funny to me because Flair always championed the Lakers, and even in hospital with paralysis possibly looming. It was like they were still working an angle because the dude from Virginia Beach is probably not the hugest Boston Celtics fan, but I digress. But there was a story in PWI about that.
Is this the one?
That's it right
There we
there.
go. Yeah.
So
Keep that
that's
up.
going to be on my wall when I get my decorations up to par, as we do, as Stephen has his. Uh, but yeah, that was just it was just heartbreaking as a fan because um, for a wrestler to be off of TV for a couple weeks, we're used to because when you have an injury angle, you're gonna see that. But then 6 months go by and nothing, and there's mention, in a wrestling magazine here and there, but you don't see this person. And we're gonna see a match uh, a little bit later that's gonna show, or anyway, we're gonna mention a match rather that's going to, have his return in it. But as he makes his uh, hello address to the fans, um, or actually, it's not even an address. He just waves at them, but it's a Crockett Cup. But you know, aside from with no social media and with no, just having the magazines and what they say on wrestling. I mean, there wasn't mention of this guy for the better part of a year, and so the fact that he was alive was consoling. But fans, especially those that he was their favorite, it kind of left holding the bag, and that led to a couple of face turns here and there, which I'm sure we'll digress.
Yeah.
We'll address.
Well, yeah, I think we can touch on that for a minute because as we've been talking, I realized we've already kind of buried the gimmick a little bit. We are chronologically out of order, so it's okay. I think for us to be a little all over the place in this episode. Nikita's work was a little all over the place sometimes too, so it's okay. But yeah, that I do remember again through PWI magazines and stuff, the very real tragedy of Magnum and his career ending through that accident leads to a booking change where Nikita turns face and teams with Dusty to take on the Horsemen. And the idea, you know, I think that's the thing too, is that when you're as, not that everyone needs a real life personal tragedy for this, but it's a real testament to the proportion that you're over as a heel. There's like it's like an equal and opposite reaction. Like if you can be turned face eventually, how proportionately face you are as well. How well you're received when you turn face. And even though at least at the moment of the turn, if anything, I think about, even though he wasn't really a long-term successful face, I think about Virgil turning on Ted DiBiase. Like the moment of him turning was amazing. It's always one of my go-to face turn moments. I think of, Batista turning on Triple H and leaving Evolution was, just that's an iconic moment in wrestling now. And that's been 20 years. But going back and again, just beating that dead horse of how lively the NWA crowds were.
Yeah.
I don't know, and maybe you can tell me too, because I've only seen like past footage of it, but there looked to be a cage match with maybe Ole and JJ Dillon and maybe to Arn was in there. Flair was present, but he wasn't in the match where Dusty and Nikita came, and they had already basically communicated and done an interview, and Dusty had said, I've called out to Nikita, and like out of Nikita's respect, this warrior like respect for Magnum, I will be your partner, to take on the Horsemen. And the tension you could hear in the crowd as they like got out to the ring and go into the cage, and the Horseman jumped Dusty immediately because he's the first one in the cage. And when Nikita just sits back and waits for a second and then just charges and like obliterates Ole, and like the crowd just explodes, man. They go banana, as Matt Patterson would say.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that season, that time?
Yeah, well, so a little bit before that, I remember watching like a NWA Worldwide or something, and I don't remember the context. I just remember um, that Dusty was being jumped by the Horsemen, um, and it was after a Flair match because Flair was from a like he was wearing tights and hair was messed up and everything.
Probably bleeding.
And the Horsemen were jumping Dusty, and Nikita came and made the save. And I don't know where in the timeline this was, but I do know that nobody expected it. Flair's reaction is one of the best reactions I've ever seen. There were so many bleeps from what he was saying. He was like, and just like bleep, bleep, bleep. And it was like, obviously fade into, the end credits because it was at the right at the end of the program.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a mid-Atlantic show or TV program because I remember greatness in my ears as Bob Cottle's voice was a part of that broadcast. But yeah, I mean, the sequence I'm not really clear on, but it was definitely at the beginning because as a religious watcher, it never. I was surprised. I remember being surprised that Nikita came out and made the save, but when Nikita made, and maybe there was some uncertainty in Nikita's intentions, with him not engaging completely, in that turn until finally he just had enough, and the warrior samurai type honor that they respect each other with was going to be enough to make his allegiance thick enough or strong enough join in this now feud with more than just the Horseman versus Dusty. Now uh, Dusty versus his allies, which really, even though we're kind of jumping the shark on this, we have uh, this type of feud situation to thank War Games for. So,
Yeah.
uh, but anyway, but yeah, I think that um, you know Nikita, coming over to Dusty's side or the face side or whatever in that moment, unfortunately because of Magnum's injury, uh, but it was just a seamless transition.
Hmm. Well, speaking of the Horsemen, let's jump forward in matches, but backwards in time. Uh, we referenced earlier to be a monster heel is to be able to have other heels perceived as a babyface in response to that, and that takes us to the first of multiple times we'll mention this show, the Great American Bash, going all the way back to 1985. And in this show, Nikita takes on Nature Boy himself, Ric Flair, for that beautiful domed globe NWA title. This match is famous because you've probably seen this clip if you watched wrestling for a really long time in Flair montages. This is the show where Flair enters the ring from a helicopter uh, that they kind of tried to do with Charlotte back at that Mania where she and Rousey and Becky Lynch main evented. Um, that show, I believe, is on WCW's YouTube channel or the WWE Vault at this point. And again, just a great exercise in a couple of things. One, what we just said is that if a heel's big enough, he can even make other heels look sympathetic in that regard. And also, to his credit, Flair really brought. I mean, Flair brought the best out of everybody in that stretch in the mid '80s to late '80s, and sometimes in the ring he had a Steamboat or a Morton, and sometimes he had a Nikita or a Road Warrior Hawk or somebody who was just a monster but wasn't really built to go 60, And I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what the match time is for this, but the fact that Rick really took Nikita the distance, and this isn't their only time. I think they also faced off maybe at a Crockett Cup as well. Um, but again, a real testimony to Rick having good chemistry with just about everybody in this time frame, and Nikita's strength and his menacing demeanor as well here in this huge crowd for Bash 85. What are your thoughts on the Bash 85 match?
Yeah, I just it was interesting because, and I think I mentioned this to you when we were watching back. I I was thinking up until I watched it that it was a different match,
Uh,
the whole thing. And so I kind of watched this Bash match. Um, it wasn't the first time I'd seen it, but I don't think. But I mean, I watched it with about as fresh a set of eyes as you could get, and so um, I just and I hate to sound like somebody who knows what it's like to work a match, but like the psychology that went into and like the slow build, and you just don't see that anymore.
yeah,
I like these new guys. I do like all the guys they're bringing on Raw. Trick Williams, the guy. Um, I'm trying to
Javon.
think of his name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, he just does stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like the
Mhm.
body shouldn't be able to do certain things, and so um, so I like that style. But there's something to be said for the slow, more methodical, uh, believable pace of grabbing
Grab a
headlock,
hold.
grab a hold, and taper down. But but yeah, I was taken back to the '80s, I guess, with rewatching this match, and so um, like I said, I was thinking that it was a different match for the longest time, but just watching the way that Flair was able to make Nikita look like $1,000,000 and um, just make him look believable as this unstopped the opening um, tie-ups and the test of strength and just him throwing Flair all over the ring,
Yeah.
which Flair did that for everybody, but just making Nikita and knowing uh, and seeing Nikita work with somebody less seasoned in other matches, but like seeing how good and selfless um, the multiple time and depending on which metric you believe or the world champion the most times documented or undocumented made him look. Um, that just gave us a good appreciation for that. And I think that not that I know what it's like to live that carny lifestyle, but to say that you give your body to someone and trust them enough to not only make yourself look good, but make them look good as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. And there was a lot of emotion going into this match as well, which I want to say a couple of things. One, you were just talking about the modern product and stuff, and I want to give because so we're shooting this right in the aftermath of Elimination Chamber 2026, and I want to give a shout out, even though this is so off topic, to Finn Balor.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Talking about working that style, that was one thing that really caught my attention in his match with CM Punk, who's very much doing this sort of old man Logan world title run right now. It's like Clint Eastwood and Unforgiven trying to do Bret Hart's 1993 title run, where take on all comers, but he's also old and he knows it. It's kind of fascinating to me once I kind of grasped that approach to it. And Finn's approach in that match was really a breath of fresh air towards the sort of relentless high spot style once and credit to the commentary team drawing attention to Punk's chest, being focused on knowing that that's Finn's finisher. And he was just trying to loosen him up over and over again and everything. So anyway, like it's hard to have a one-on-one match in a gimmick PLE where everybody's just waiting for the cage matches to come, and still draw attention, even if he is the hometown guy, to really deliver on that. And I thought they did a good job of that. So back to Flair and Nikita. So if you're not aware, I mean, if you're a Flair fan, you know this like the back of your hand. But Flair shouldn't have even been at this point in his career. Speaking of tragedy and stuff, is that he was involved in a plane crash in 1975, 10 years before this match happened, where his back was broken and they told him that he was never going to wrestle again. And that was before he even ever won his first world title, let alone 16 or 22, depending on how you count. And
before it was the Nature Boy.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, even before any iteration of Ric Flair existed, his career was over before it started, literally. And David Crockett was also in that crash, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so there was a ringside, interview that Crockett did with Nikita in the lead up to this match, I guess, where Nikita is saying Nikita things full on, this and that and everything. And I think calling Flair a coward or something like that. And Crockett gets visibly emotional, which
they would say, yeah.
What's that?
Fighting mad, as they would say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And in a vacuum, it maybe looks a little awkward, but when you recognize the history that he's like he's really coming off as like Shoot standing up for his friend. And like I saw his back get broken and like we were lucky to walk away from that crash. So don't you ever call him again. And then he eats a Russian sickle clothesline for his trouble. And that is I mean, that's such a bold spot to do for that time, and so emotionally bold. I'm just sitting here trying to think, like, you would have to have like somebody. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to put that out into the air, but I'm just thinking about, like, modern day tragedies or things are avoided, like, that kind of stuff. It could really, like, it'd be very, very difficult to do in good taste.
Yeah, they probably had extra security working that TV taping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I haven't even thinking about the crowd.
Yeah,
The crowd responding. Yeah. They
yeah,
would have needed it, because, like, if that was done in Greensboro
yeah.
or,
Any
anywhere,
of those mid-Atlantic places, yeah.
yeah, it'd have been nuts there in Atlanta. So, yeah, Flair carries Nikita to a great match. The only thing, and I really shouldn't even bring it up because I don't want to denigrate any of the matches, but the thing that I've noticed in hindsight now is that Crockett really was trying in their own way to have mainstream crossover appeal for their big events like the bashes when they were doing a tour. So, sometimes I heard, like, they'd have, a popular country act, pair up with them for a concert or whatever.
Yeah.
And some local sportscaster accompanied Flair to the ring, and he's holding a rubber chicken the whole time,
Wow.
which is conjuring images of whoever threw that rubber chicken at Cody when he lost to Roman at that
Yeah.
Hollywood WrestleMania. But I'm like, this is the most, when I think about how legitimate mid 80s NWA was, Flair was like, we're a sport,
Mhm.
and all this stuff. And I see the dude with the rubber chicken walking next to him. I'm like, this is like, Flair's got to be hating this.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. But anyway, it's such a interesting witness thing to behold, because that guy was, I guess, the ring announcer for that, the special ring announcer for that match or something. Anyway, but, like, it was just, oh man, it was silly. So, all right. So, timeline reestablished.
Mhm.
Nikita takes on Flair at Bash 85. In the summer of 86, he has a best of 7 with Magnum TA. Wins the United States title. Let's just pull that up one more time. Looking beautiful.
Mhm.
But after that, Nikita, as the U.S. champion, has a unification match the next month with another mid-card title the NWA had, called the National Heavyweight Championship, which I'll pull that up. Fans of the old school TV title will recognize that design as well. Another great looking belt, even though it was a little more short-lived. I think it was sort of goldish at that time, or if it was I don't know if it was silver back then or not. That belt has gone through a few iterations, because the modern NWA has a national heavyweight title as well. So, but he would take on the national heavyweight champion and former United States champion. Prepare yourselves if you don't know who I'm referencing. Wahoo McDaniel. So, Wahoo was before my time. I do remember Tatanka in the mid 90s. Wrestling has never been, even in the age of El Grande Americano, wrestling has never been what you could be accused of being culturally sensitive.
Right.
But nevertheless, Wahoo was mega over as a babyface, but also did a stint as a heel as well. And you would remember more than me, because he predates me. He was definitely on the twilight of his career when I was coming along as a fan. He might have even already retired at that point, or at least left the NWA. I'm not sure. But he was one of Dad's favorites at the time.
Mhm.
And you shared with me a story before we started about
Yeah.
that. So I want to let everybody hear that story about
Yeah.
Dad and how Wahoo killed the business for Dad.
Yeah. Well, so there's two stories that are Wahoo centric that I'd like to mention. One is one that my dad told me uh, from when he could have been in high school, maybe uh, a young adult, but at any rate, it was in the 50s or six. No, no, it would have had to have been the 70s. So he was already past college age. So never mind. My revisionist history mind just made me realize how much more Stephen and I are like my dad anyway, because we very passionate about wrestling. Seems later in life that we get, but uh, so Dad was mentioning he had always suspected that, and he didn't use this terminology, but people watching this, I'm going to use terminology that we would understand. Um, so my dad was always suspecting and suspicious that wrestling was a work, but he wasn't 100% sure until he saw Wahoo McDaniel, who is a participant in this match that we're talking about, along with Greg Valentine, uh, enjoying a tub of popcorn or two or three at the movies. And so the only catch to that is they were currently feuding. So Dad saw that and knew at that moment that it was a work. And so he shared that with me at least three times over the course of my life. But I don't remember much about that other than the participants. Um, and so, and assuming because of my dad seeing them at the movies that it was for Mid Atlantic wrestling. But
I would like to think they were going to see The Way We Were
maybe.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows
Yeah.
what
It
Wahoo
could have
and
been.
Greg were up to?
Yeah.
Um, but who
And
knows?
yeah. And there was another one that Dad told me was, and this was post Wahoo's heel turn, and it may have been somewhere around the time of this match or this unification. Um, Dusty was Dusty's going to Dusty, and what that means is you're going to have problems with Flair and the Horseman. And
Sure.
so Dusty was calling on some old friends to help him, and they did a vignette or a interview segment with Wahoo, and he said he went into this long drawn out thing about history and how he didn't want to stick his nose in other people's business and be his own man. He said until Dusty said those two words, I need help. And so anyway, that's for free. I just wanted to throw that in. I can't see a picture or a match with Wahoo McDaniel and not think about
Yeah.
the iteration of that. But
Yeah.
for all that to be said, stumbling aside, verbal stumblings aside, and all that, Wahoo was a tremendous worker. Did you ever hear the story of? And I'm trying to think of who it was. It might have been Flair. They were talking about a match where Wahoo had just had his appendix taken out.
No.
Yeah. So he was like, yeah, it was Flair. And so it was one of those shoot interviews. But he was like, he backed him into the corner, gave him a few of those open handed downstroke Wahoo type chops. And he said, Flair said, next thing he knew, he turned him around and shoved him. And he said, chop me and everything. He's like, chop me, I'm hurting. And he was like, okay. Anyway, after the match, he was like, what was that about? And come to find out, Wahoo had a vasectomy that day.
Jeez.
And
Appendectomy, you mean?
no, a vasectomy.
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all
He
that
was hurt.
entails. Yeah. It was definitely that ectomy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's Flair's story anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, his point probably being how tough wrestlers were back
Sure.
then. But anyway, that's for free.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And sorry, Gunther, that Freudian slip there, because I was going to talk about Wahoo's chops. Like,
yeah.
I mean, was
they were down, they weren't the Flair knife edge chops. They were overhanded. So
overhand slaps, and that was where he made his money for sure. And That's one thing I do remember a lot about Wahoo. Like, I mean, in the age of Trick Williams, going on TV with his shirt off, showing off his abs, Wahoo may not look like much, but again, this was during a time where you had to be as good out of the ring as you were in the ring to win a fight, and Wahoo was definitely one of those guys for sure. Tough piece of work for sure. But yeah. Props to the late Dad Sandridge for putting us on game long before Botchamania was ever a thing. For that, he loved to tell the same few botch promo stories. He also, I don't even remember who it was, but I just remember him using the phrase, "There's a knot in the pit of my stomach." Just mixing metaphors.
That probably was Wahoo too. No, I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure we'll have to find out.
Yeah. That's great. So this, anyway, Nikita, that's funny. The Nikita episode has just been putting over everybody else, but Nikita, but that's all good. Nikita was great by virtue of the people that he was matched up with, I think a lot of the time. So it's only fair for us to shine some light on some of his dance partners for sure. So yeah, that match in 86, September of 86, took place in the Omni Unification match. Of course, Nikita has Uncle Ivan in the corner again. And there's a lot of, back and forth. And again, it is sort of a similar story when Nikita is met with someone who might be physically close to him in size, maybe not necessarily in definition. And I think it's just a great marker of him as a heel, that he's not afraid to look a little vulnerable when he's in the ring with somebody kind of close to his size, that he has to resort to something to try to get out of things, something a little underhanded. And, some people nowadays, I think, see some sort of, dominant heel and think that you're cutting their legs out from under them by having them cheat or something, like they just need to be undefeated or something. But honestly, I think that makes for more hate in the crowd towards the heel. And I think that works really well. So that is Omni 86. We'll try to get that in the episode description as well. So we have one final Nikita match, and there's a stretch of time. So again, heel Nikita, U.S. champion Nikita. Now he's unified. He wins that match. He unifies in the NWA national title, goes away for a number of years, long past the WCW times, until NWA is just in independent territory again. And Nikita turns face for a while and then disappears. Probably, actually, I'm not sure when he leaves. 88, 89, maybe 88 sometime. Because I don't remember him being around in 89 once, like Steamboat and then Tully and Arn leave and stuff in it. The next time I remember seeing him publicized, shout out to our last Steiner Brothers episode, was there's a little bit of a cross section here. Super Brawl 1 in May of 1991. Nikita reemerges to feud with Lex Luger, who he had feuded with over the U.S. title after Magnum, and when Luger was a part of the Horsemen. But at this point, Luger's a babyface, and he's teaming with Sting against the Steiner brothers for the tag team titles at Super Brawl 1. Nikita comes down to the ring to attack Lex Luger. Sting sees it, saves Lex, pushes him out of the way, and eats a chain shot from Nikita. And in doing so, loses the match. And if I may, just have a terrible impersonation. Nikita.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Nikita bails before the match is even over. Steiners, they're all, it's a babyface tag match. So they're all friends after it's over with. But they explain, it's almost like Sting didn't really know what hit him because it all happened so fast. They explain to Sting what's happening. So Sting's charging down the aisle to try to catch up with Nikita, who is backstage at this point with his back turned to the camera, and Tony Schiavone just apoplectic, just like, Nikita, what are you doing? What's going on? And he's just, and indulge me, everybody. This is going to be terrible, but we'll get through it together. Sting was at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what's going on. And he's just like shaking his head and everything. And it's just the most like absurd thing. And at that point is when Sting like comes into view of the camera, and they're tearing each other up. And again, to harken back to the Steiners episode, we mentioned Clash of the Champions 15 in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they had the IWGP tag match. Well, also on that card was a one-on-one match with Sting and Nikita Koloff, which Sting won kind of with a sort of I wouldn't know if I call it a fluke roll-up, but it did not demonstrate that Sting could maybe go power for power with Nikita, but that he was just a little bit faster. And that led to, once again, coming back to the Great American Bash. Great American Bash 1991, which as a whole, not a great card because a lot of things happened in between June and July of 1991. The biggest thing, Ric Flair leaving WCW and ending up in the WWF later that year. But on that card was Sting versus Nikita in a Russian chain match. And that was one thing that we had not added to the list of Nikita things, was the Russian chain match. He had him as tag matches, and obviously with the Mount Rushmore idea, we're trying to limit ourselves to 4 matches. But there are tag matches with him and Ivan against the Road Warriors, chain matches. There's some good chain matches out there for Nikita, if you look hard enough. But this particular match I thought was important because, one, it was the sort of later era Nikita, post USSR Nikita, and also showing that like the crowd was into the match, but Sting, in his defense, was still only maybe 2-3 years in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And so Nikita, I think, benefited most from being in the ring with someone who could really lead him, and he could just kind of react to. And he and Sting both, I don't think, would really be considered veterans at that point in either of their careers. And so it is a little creative in the finish of the match. You know, part of the chain match is kind of like the strap match. You drag them to the 4 corners of the ring. And I feel like it could have been a little more violent, you know, as far as chain matches go. I mean, you look at like go back to whenever I think about a chain, I think about the dog collar match with Piper and Valentine and 83, definitely didn't go to that level for sure. But I think it could have been a little bit more than what it was. But I think it's a good demonstration of limitations, but at the same time, they were creative in the match, and it was a good, honestly, Sting in the early 90s, outside of Flair and Vader, didn't have a ton of, well, I take that back. Rude was good too, but not a lot of, a whole lot of high profile feuds one-on-one for him, especially when you look at the sort of evolution of WCW champions and kind of go from Flair to being the guy to Sting being the guy. And you think about how many dance partners Flair had that were believable as legitimate threats. Sting had some, but not as many. But I think Nikita had the potential to be a big one there as well. What are your memories or thoughts about the Sting Nikita feud?
Yeah, well, I think Nikita coming back as a heel, even though I didn't like it, in terms of fandom, but from a overall standpoint, I think made a lot of sense because with Sting, who did he have?
Yeah,
Lexus on again, off again, to where Lexus turns to me stopped meaning anything because it's kind of like the modern, well, not modern anymore, but more recently the Big Show and his back and forth,
yeah,
and back and forth and back and forth. To me, the OG for that was Lex Luger.
Oh, 100%.
But but yeah, so I was glad to see. Um, I was glad to see Nikita, be a heel there. And even though it was never explicitly stated that I can remember, when he clotheslined Sting, he was going for Luger because of their
Right.
history. And
And
so,
Luger was U.S. champion at that
yeah,
time.
he was trying to egg it. That's right. That's right. And so, uh, but Sting, I'm sorry, Nikita, uh, coming back in that regard, just open up, not another heel, but like just because of his history and because of his uh, physical dominance, albeit not as skilled as some, put him not just in the top tier, but I can't think of a heel. Not that I'm doing this off the cuff, but I can't think of you know him not being a top one or two heel. After that turn or that it's not even really a turn; it's just coming back into the company. And so
Yeah.
um, that longevity, and you talk too about, and I agree with you about working style. Um, you know, uh, you put Sting in a feud with Nikita, who's going to lead the dance?
Yeah.
But um, because Nikita and Sting too, both in high profile feuds with Flair are just things to etch into the history books.
Yeah.
But Nikita had been doing it longer than Sting on a bigger stage, which technically, if you think about it, and I'm just thinking out loud here, but I mean, wouldn't he be considered the grizzled old vet? In
Of
this,
the two, I mean, yeah, he'd had a few years on
yeah,
Sting because I marked Sting's first main event was in '88 against
right,
Flair at that first clash. And I mean, Nikita had main evented the Great American Bash 3 years prior to that
yeah.
with
And I'm
Flair.
trying to think about how far back Sting, being in Mid South and stuff, all that stuff was, but I can't remember like when the Blade Runners started.
Sure.
Um, but
It wouldn't have been long.
anyway, I don't really have an ending point to that. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, you bringing that up, and I mean, I can dig into that, before we wrap up today, because like I that it's a hard thing to wrap your mind around if you go into the summer of '91, even before Flair leaves, if it's not going to be Flair,
mhm,
because that's my sort of neural like nexus point is that Clash of Champions right before the Bash because we
yeah,
watched it so many times on that VHS tape, but getting the lay of the land. Um, there weren't any top heels
mhm,
at that time other than Flair.
yeah,
If it was Nikita and Flair's about to leave, you
mhm,
had now obviously they shuffled the deck around after Flair left and they elevated Barry Windham, but at that time, Windham was feuding with Brian Pillman.
right,
You had Arn Anderson, who we love. Arn is one of the all-time greats, but Arn was never main event heel. He was always the guy. He literally his name's the enforcer. He's
right,
your henchman. He is the goat among henchmen, for sure. But I'm remembering all the other heels. You had like the Freebirds. I mean, you had I don't remember if Sid was still there. No, he wasn't in '91. He was in WWF at that point, and he had already feuded with Sting anyway. At the
What about
prior,
Rick Rude?
Rick Rude had not gotten there yet. He would get there
Wow,
later.
there was
He,
nobody.
yeah, there was nobody. The only other people that were there, and what's wild is how many great wrestlers would be there, but they just showed up.
Mhm,
Nash had just shown up, although he was Oz. Steve Austin had just shown up.
mhm,
And Scott Hall had just shown up too as a
yeah,
Diamond Stud. But all of them were brand new and, TV title at best.
yeah,
And so there was nobody. Like, I mean, they had just come off the New Japan show. And then that first Super Bowl was what Flair and Fujinami
mhm,
too. So like, yeah, there was nobody. And like Sting and Flair was the only thing you had because it was going to be Luger and Flair at the Bash
yeah.
that year too, and then Sting and Koloff. So I wonder if Flair had never left and Jim Hurd hadn't, done all the things to Flair that Jim Herd did. What that landscape could have looked like, I don't know. Honestly, I think in hindsight, in the long run, it ended up being better because with Flair being gone, I don't know that Rude ascends to the heights that he does. Does the Dangerous Alliance end up being a thing? With all that. So, yeah, it was a really weird holding pattern in the summer of '91. Even if Flair had stayed through the bash, because Nikita was the only guy there that was viable. Because like he goes, so because Luger was U.S. champion, right? Because Nikita had targeted him. He drops or what do you call it? He vacates the U.S. title because he becomes world champion at that point. And Sting ends up winning the U.S. title tournament. I think he beat Johnny B. Bad or maybe Steve Austin. But and by the way, I looked this up, and I'm hoping the Vault maybe does this. But it was an Omni show where they had a one night U.S. title tournament, and he beat Austin and Bad and somebody else, like three dudes in one night to win the title. Sting did. Now, from what I've read, all those match times look really short, and maybe there's a DQ here or there. So maybe it's not going to get all the stars that some people like to give out. But nevertheless, I do find it a fascinating piece of wrestling history. But yeah, so it was a real kind of a desert landscape in terms of contenders at that time. So Nikita really was a breath of fresh air for that. And he would end up turning face again. They kind of reheated the nachos on it a little bit, so to speak, if I can pull a phrase out of nowhere, for War Games 92, because after his feud with Sting was over and Rude was in the picture and the Dangerous Alliance was in the picture and they'd all ganged up on Sting, the way Sting was in the role of Dusty now at this point, and the Horsemen were the Dangerous Alliance. And I don't know how, but I came across this, and I wish I had a shot of it. I should have been paying attention when I was researching, of a WCW Saturday night where Nikita was like Sting, and it was like the Magnum TA thing all over again, or the Dusty thing where it was like, if you need me, just give me a call. Like, I respect you from our battles, and if nothing, he's consistent in that way. Yeah. And I wouldn't. And I called it reheating the nachos, but you know what? If it's just character consistency, that's not a terrible thing.
He has that samurai mentality where he
right.
respects. Oh, yeah.
But. Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing Gunther brush up against that idea if he really believes the mat is sacred with the right kind of person. That could be fun. But he's busy doing his retirement gimmick right now, so that's okay.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, so we bounced all over the map and the timeline on this tonight. Any final thoughts on Nikita as a performer? What, if you could sum it all up, or if there's anything we didn't bring up, what would you want people who never really experienced Nikita to know about Nikita?
Early, late, in all phases of it, and I don't know enough of flat top hair Nikita to qualify this for that iteration of it, but in the same vein as the Road Warriors, just intensity. I just it was believable, and the way his character, out of necessity, had to change through over the years, and it was well received every time, says a lot about the performer to me. Does he have the best work rate? Is he the most technical? Is he going to win match of the year by what's his face's standards? Probably not. But his ability to shift from one side to another and be at the top on both sides says a lot for his intangibles and his ability to cultivate that. So, to me, he was one of the, you know, I've heard somewhere that we like to, and I'm not going to quote this exactly, but believing in what we believe in. Nikita makes it easy to believe, whether he's working face whether he's working heel. Gosh, I never heard his Midwestern dialect until the last 10 years. So
Right. Yeah.
it's,
He
um,
lived the gimmick. Yeah. For at
yeah.
least
So
vocally.
yeah. And I just, um, he's not, like I said, not going to win any match of the year. He's not going to be in any of those candidates. But like from a character standpoint and believability, um, just uh, a lot of fun if you're willing to suspend that kind of disbelief. If you just let him take you on the ride. So
Yeah. No, super well said there. And I would agree with all that. And I would just add on, like, I think Nikita is probably one of the best case studies on that. You don't in wrestling. I mean, maybe you can extrapolate this to life too, you don't have to be limited by your limitations. And, you know, yeah, like you said, he's not gonna be the man of 1,004 holds, but it's a great and there's also nothing to be ashamed of accentuating your strengths and masking your weaknesses in something like wrestling. Like, he was a great example of accentuating his strengths, like capitalizing on his look as a heel at the time that it was, really putting him in situations where he could terrify people, and then again turning all that negative momentum on its head, really striking while the iron was hot, being advantageous of a very real tragedy, not exploitative, but honestly using that as a time to channel into something, created something even more huge. Like I've theorized on other videos and stuff what it would look like for Dirty Dom to have a face turn, a Nikita like face turn. If he ever did, I posited a theory one time, if they could really just brutalize Rey Mysterio to the point one day of he's like, no, I'm not gonna let you kill my dad. You know, um, if they ever pulled a face trigger on Dom, he'd never be a heel again. Like he would be in concrete as a baby face from that point on.
reaction wise, he already is.
Yeah, I mean, that depending on where you go, they already love him or are giving him the love kind of hate, like, so it's, yeah, that we'll see whenever that's coming. Nevertheless, like, yeah, Nikita was just a great example of what you can do with somebody in wrestling if they're willing to pour themselves into it as well. Like, I mean, with the attitude, the approach, again, like really sort of believing in it to a degree, as well. We always say, and we said at the beginning, we'll say it again, and we'll say it when we sign off, believing makes wrestling better. But like, the belief Nikita put into his own performances, really, really, accentuated everything. And, obviously pair him with the right people. And you have, a good story for a good time, but yeah, he was excellent and a great, um, again, a great case study, a great blueprint, I think, for bringing in a dominant, unbreakable heel. Like, if you really like how you can do that, how you can still make them look vulnerable and still unstoppable at the same time. And so, yeah, great, great character in wrestling who probably doesn't get enough credit, for his contributions to wrestling during that time. But yeah, check out Nikita Koloff. If you guys have any additional Nikita matches or memories you want to share in the comments, please do. That's what we want this space to be, is remembering these times and being encouraged and reinvigorated of the things that we love about wrestling. And we'll be back again with another episode with a different performer coming up again in short time. Any final words, Big Brother, before we sign off?
I'm gonna roll the dice and say Shatoata. I don't
There
know,
we go.
but I heard Nikita say it a lot, so hopefully it's not offensive.
There we go.
I don't know.
Like, yeah. Hopefully we don't get struck on this video for that.
Right.
We'll find out. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for rocking with us again. Again, we say it all the time, and we'll say it today too. Don't forget to be a mark. Being a mark means you believe, Believing makes wrestling better. We'll see you again for the next episode of Mount Rushmore Matches. Take care.